Hello, today I want to talk about STEAM education class based on teacher questioning person with intellectual disability. My name is Yungkeun Park. The STEAM, which the Korean government has been promoting since 2011, is not an education that simply conveys knowledge, but an education method that aims to produce new creative product. In other words, it's an educational method for nurturing talented people with creative and correct personality who can acquire theoretical and conceptual knowledge of science and mathematics, cultivate artistic and emotional ability, and link and utilize engineering and technology in real life. Currently, many countries around the world, including the United States, are recognizing the importance of STEAM and are making effort to apply the effect of such education to the educational field. However, when the needs for STEAM was first raised in developed countries, and when it was accepted in Korea, most of the policy establishment research was conducted for non-disabled students. STEAM research school designation was not made at all. In the field of special education in Korea, the process of exploring problem and understanding theory and principle on their own is omitted, and in many cases, only the conclusion provided. In fact, students with disability lack the knowledge, lack the ability to generalize, and despite the needs to provide education that fosters adaptability to real life, adherence to traditional educational methods further deteriorates students' thinking ability, problem-solving ability, and interest in subject. STEAM does not use simple indoctrination method, so it can induce student interest, and through this, education in which students participate is possible, problem-solving ability and creativity can be cultivated, and knowledge in a changing society based on creativity. It is expected that it will be able to help them have the ability to apply the knowledge. In addition, students with intellectual disability naturally interact with other students in the class through STEAM applied class, and through this interaction, it is expected that there will be a collective meaning formation process, and this collective meaning formation process can lead to individual meaning of formation process. However, in order to guarantee the effect of STEAMs, it is necessary to examine whether the teacher who are running the class are providing student-led classes and class that foster creativity according to the purpose of the actual class. In this way, one of the strategies discussed as the professionalism of teacher who conduct the STEAM class is teacher inquiry, although it is mentioned as important to foster student-led creativity, problem-solving ability, and ability to apply knowledge. In general, a good class is a class in which learner actively participate in the class and active verbal interaction between learner and teachers. It can be said that the teacher's questions are very important to enhance the effectiveness of STEAM class. A teacher's question is one of the most valuable instructional skills to stimulate student thinking and serve several purposes, such as finding relevant things from learner, inferring relationships, facilitating the reasoning process, examining knowledge, and challenging thinking. It is used as a strategy for a teacher's question is an important teaching skill that is commonly used in all stages of the class. It can be said that it is the most important skill among various teaching skills that a teacher must acquire, and it can be said to be one of the important factors to evaluate the professional competence of the teachers. In the field of special education, as the interest in special education teachers' teaching expertise increased, research related to questionnaire began to be conducted. In the study of Sang-Sin Kim, the special teacher's perception of the special teacher's question were analyzed and the type of question asked in the classroom situation. In this study, after described the linguistic interaction that occurred in the topic-centered integrated class 12, the teacher question type were analyzed through Gary's teacher response interrogation analysis system. Hong Jae-young corrected and transcribed 9 lessons of Korean language class that are routinely conducted in special schools with the intellectual disability. In order to examine the type of question asked by special teacher in Korean language class conducted at special schools with intellectual disability and the characteristics of teacher's question in each class and analysis were performed. In addition, studies analyzing teacher question in math class in special schools and studies analyzing the characteristics of linguistic interaction between teacher and student in class and special school for the deaf have been conducted. In this study, various aspects of teacher inquiry in order to find out whether the teacher in charge is performing the class according to the purpose of the class based on the actual STEAM class, which is expected to develop the problem-solving ability, creativity, and knowledge application ability of students with intellectual disability. Based on this, it will be possible to prepare basic data necessary for improving the class of a teacher in charge of science department who want to use STEAM in special schools with intellectual disability. Specific research questions to achieve the research purpose are as follows. First, what are the type of questions asked by teachers of special school with intellectual disability and their level of use in science class using STEAM? Second, according to the area of science class using STEAM, what are the type and characteristics of questions by teachers of special school with intellectual disability? Third, according to the stage of science class using STEAM, what are the type of questions and characteristics of teachers of special school with intellectual disability? I want to talk about method. First, I want to talk about participant. The participants of this study are teachers K and P who are in charge of science class in one class in the 30 years of high school and one class in the second years of high school at a special school for intellectual disability. There are 7 students with disability in the high school sophomore class in charge of teachers K. Most of the students have intellectual disability as a main disability, and there are many students with autism. There are a total of 8 students with disability in the high school 3rd grade class that teacher P is in charge of. The 2 teachers have been conducting pre-centered convergence class since 5 years ago. As I was conducting a pre-centered class, I found out that there are many similarities to STEAM, and I was interested. He said that the students with intellectual disability who are currently teaching had no choice but to take a class such as pre-centered class or STEAM because their cognitive level was low, and if they were not interested, they would lose concentration class. However, at first, they did not know exactly what STEAM was and practiced the class, and they said that they become interested in STEAM as they try and research to teach by fusion of several subjects or activities rather than one subject. Both teachers have been making effort to improve their class expertise. The data collected for this study are video recording of 8th class of STEAM class conducted by 2 special teacher schools before the start of class in the first semester of 2019. In February, the purpose and procedure of the study were sufficiently explained through several meetings with the teacher who will participate in the study. The corrective class data were analyzed according to the typical procedure of the class analysis process. Researcher and research assistant transcribe all verbal interaction that appear in class. Second, the transcriber data were reviewed by researcher and research assistant for possible effort in the transcription process. Third, the researcher read the transcription data line by line and analyzed the type of inquiry. First, the researcher applied the code to the teacher's question and analyzed it using a preset analysis frame. I want to talk about result. First is about type of inquiry frequency analysis of utilization. Cognitive and memorial inquiry. Among the questions in the convergence class of teacher of special school with intellectual disability, cognitive memory question accounted for the largest proportion, accounting for 70.2% of the total question. In the class, it allowed the student to simply record the information necessary for science learning, to check whether or not they actually know the information, to check the condition given in the process of solving problem, to ask the learner to do something related to the class. It is thought that it is because a lot of footnotes, suggestion, action, or activity are used. The reason that the proportion of cognitive and memory question is highest overall is that both the question that simply remind you of what you have already learned and the question that check whether you remember what you have already learned are all included in the cognitive and memory questions. And at the same time, the result can be seen because teacher did not give students an opportunity to solve problem on their own during class. Convergent inquiry. Among the class question of a teacher of special school with intellectual disability, convergence questions were 5.8% of total question. Teachers were using convergent questions to find out whether the concept learned could be applied to other related part in order to inquire the relationship between the given material or the condition presented in the problem-solving process performed in class. Diffusion inquiry. Among the questions of the special school teachers, diffuse questions accounted for 23.1% of the total question, which was rather high. Diffusion question is a question that induces or predicted to freely express opinion in a situation whether data is scarce or allow for comprehensive thinking. Diffusion questions that induce student creative thinking are not an easy question type, but due to the nature of the comparison class, it is judged that it appears at a rather high rate as it contains content to ask for convergent knowledge in better speed. Evaluative inquiry. Among the questions of special education teacher, evaluative questions were very low, accounting for 2.1% of all questions. Even with the open question type, it was significantly lower compared to the diffusion question, which is because special education teachers are not good at asking questions that require value judgment, reasons, or options for students with intellectual disability who have a cognitive disability. Inquiry analysis according to the contents area of the class. First is electric energy field. In the electric energy domain, cognitive memory questions were the most at 57.1%, followed by divergent questions at 36.9%. convergent questions at 4.8% and evaluative question at 1.2%. Cognitive memory questioning require answer to evaluate the degree to which students understand the concept. It is found that the most frequently used cognitive memory questions as the core or reduced back to formula and procedural information. In addition, through STEAM, students are encouraged to imagine and compare the home appliance they are using with the tool used by their ancestors in the past and teach the correct and safe usage of various home appliances, and encourage students to produce the data on their own rather than simply transferring knowledge. Breathing area. In the breathing area, cognitive and memory questions were the highest at 90.1%, followed by convergent question, diffuse question, evaluative question. The teacher looked into the respiratory system through the first class and mainly looked at the principle of inhalation and exhalation and the principle of respiration. In order to understand the principle of respiration, you need to know about the respiratory system, inhalation and exhalation. But since it is a difficult concept, the teacher immediately recorded what they learned in the previous class. Breathing area. Convergence questions were asked to connect the process of the respiratory organ and principle of respiration, inhalation and exhalation, and to interpret the causal relationship. However, frequency of open questions such as diffuse and evaluative question was not high. I want to talk about the discussion. This study intends to suggest the implication for question in implementing STEAM class as course cited by analyzing the question of a teacher of a student with intellectual disability that appeared in the class using STEAM. First, if we look at the question that appear in the convergence class of teacher of a special school with intellectual disability by question types, special teacher used the question in the order of cognitive memory question, diffuse question, convergent question, evaluative question during the class. This is a previous study showing that special education teacher used closed question more often than more than open one in class. It mainly used low-level question in class. Special education teachers have low level of knowledge about question, and about 30% of special education teachers feel the limitation and difficulty in asking questions due to the lack of knowledge. However, compared to the previous study, they show that diffuse question hardly appeared in general class, persons with intellectual disability. This study showed that the proportion of diffuse question was relatively high due to the characteristic of STEAM class. However, in STEAM class, persons with intellectual disability, closed questions such as cognitive and memory questions were found to be predominant. Teachers of several schools with teachers of special school with intellectual disability mainly use cognitive memory question in consideration of the cognitive level of student. It can be seen that special education teachers need to provide a balance between high-level and low-level questions. More specifically, among the questions in the convergence class of teacher of special school with intellectual disability, cognitive and memory questions accounted for 70.2% of total questions. It means that the most frequently used question is to check whether or not information is actually known, to check what conditions are given in the process of solving problem. and to suggest some action or activity related to the lesson to the learners. Teachers use convergence questioning, that is, to inquire about the relationship between given material and presented condition in the course of problem solving in class, and to find out whether the learners learned concept can be applied to the other related part. However, in this class, in the case of directly asking the learner about the relationship between the condition of various phenomena during the science class, convergent questions are asked to find out whether the previous learner learned concept can be applied to the related contents currently being studied. Among the questions of special school teachers, the diffuse question accounts for 23.1% of total questions. Diffusion questioning is a question that induces or predicts opinion freely in the situation, whether data is scarce or allow a person to think comprehensively. Second, this conversion class was a class that attempted to converge with other subjects centered on science class, and the teacher conducted the class in the electronic energy and breathing areas. It was found that the most frequently used cognitive memory questions asked to record or reproduce a fact formula and produce informations. In the breathing area, the teacher studies the respiratory system through the first class and mainly look at the principle of inhalation and exhalation and the principle of respiration. In order to understand the principle of respiration, we need to know about the respiratory system, inhalation and exhalation. Since it is difficult to concept, the teacher repeatedly recorded what was learned in the previous class. In conclusions, I want to talk about conclusions. In conclusion, the fact that the teacher of special school with intellectual disability considered the cognitive ability of students the most when asking questions, and that the lack of understanding of student questions was recognized as a limitation of the questions. Among the studies, there are studies that show that even students with disability can answer the somewhat high level of open-ended questions such as diffusion and evaluate questions, and that they can be applied to students with disability. Effort to use various types of questioning that can adequately stimulate and expand the thinking should be continued. In particular, since this class was a science class using STEAM, it can be said that open questions need to occupy a higher proportion than a closed question due to the nature of the class. In the future, special education teachers with intellectual disability who plan to use STEAM to conduct the science class will need to consciously use more open-ended questions to nurture creative thinking in students despite their cognitive characteristics.